Thank you for joining us on our English program here on Axiline Media Network. My name is Alulawune, your host. We come to you weekly with either news of Tegaru organizations in the diaspora all over the world or the current state of what we have been discussing, updating, having discussions on day 279 of the ongoing genocide on the people of Tigray inside the region of the Tigray, the northern region of Ethiopia, as well as throughout the country. Today we have a special guest. I would like for him to introduce himself and his organization. Please.
Thank you for having me on, Allah. My name is Teklai. I'm one of the members at Tghat. For the last 9 months, I have been writing and advocating for Tigray, and looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you for joining us. Your work is very important for people of Tigray on the grounds, obviously facing this genocide, but it's important for Tegaru diaspora as well, as they need to be informed, they need to be engaged. I think one of the things we always say as Tegaru is hadanetna, so we have to be, in order to be at one, we have to be informed on the same page of what's occurring on our people currently. So I'd like to give you a chance give a little description in terms of what Tghat is, your organization. What's the goal of the organization?
All right, so Tghat was launched at about the same time as when the war started. So that would have been some time in the beginning of November of last year. And the main purpose for starting Tghat was, we thought at least we needed to have a platform where we would talk about the Tigray side of the story. And there was one glaring problem before the war started, and that was that we had let other people to tell our story. Our narrative was being said and told by other people. And when you give a chance to other people to do that, then you aren't in charge of your destiny, right? You are at the mercy of how other people frame your stories. You are at the mercy of how people set the direction that you should travel to. And we thought that was a significant problem already, even before the war started. But after the war started, that problem became even more urgent because we needed to document what was being done in Tigray. We needed to tell the Tigray side of the story. We needed to publish material, be it government communications, which was being published in other languages, which meant that people from the international community couldn't see what the government was saying and writing. And we felt that we needed to give English translations of some documents which we thought would be important. And we felt the need to publish some opinion pieces which amplify the Tigrayan voices and other aspects of Tigray. So we had the desire to have such kind of platform before even the war started. But after the war started, that got some sense of urgency, and a group of some volunteers got together and launched it in November. And I think we have been doing, if I could say this about ourselves, an amazing work in terms of documenting and providing alternative platform for people to air their views and to provide the Tigrayan side of the story. So it's been, I think it's been one of the successful things that we have done over the last month.
I totally agree. It's essentially, it's essential to our people to have not just discussion, but educated forum for us, where people can find information that's not just agenda driven or just opinionized. It's great to have opinion pieces, but to have a place, a home, a hub where we can find this kind of information is extremely important. And one thing that brings me to, I want to talk about the current state of Tigray, but I want to talk about specifically one piece that you documented. Recently came out, a translation on the death sentences of Tegaru members of ENDF. Could you discuss a little bit of, one, the direct translation, which they'll be able to follow through the link, but a little bit into the background of what is actually occurring here?
So these are soldiers, Tigrayan soldiers who had honorably and in a dignified manner served Ethiopia for some 30 years in the military. They were being paid peanuts, as we all know. The salary of soldiers in Ethiopia isn't something to be envious about. And although that wasn't enough, when the war was about to start, they read the atmosphere. They read that the government was trying to invade Tigray. The government was trying to subjugate Tigrayans. The government was planning very egregious things against Tigray, and they understood what was being cooked against us. And obviously, you would expect them to refuse to be members of that kind of project, right? And that's what they did. They clearly said that they weren't going to be part of that, and they were paid. Their work contracts was terminated, and they were sent into concentration camps. And there are suspicions that some of them might have already been executed. It's just that we haven't heard the news. And I think it was about a week ago when the government announced that it was going to that it had passed death sentences and what would the other sentence, jail in for life. And the only crime that these people committed is because they are Tigrayans and because they refused to be members of the army to invade Tigray. And when they issued the statement, the verdict, the court statement in Amharic, we felt the need to publish it in English, because this is a significant development. This is something that would shock the international community. And we sat down and said that we should translate this and have it published, so that at least other people who are following developments in Ethiopia could have a chance to read it and to take a stance. And the response hasn't been very positive. There has been silence so far regarding the decision to execute and to jail them for life. But we hope that some people will wake up and say this is a red line being crossed, and that's the hope. But the rationale for having the document translated was we felt that this is a significant development, and the international community or anybody who is following developments in Ethiopia should be privy to.
Exactly. And I think there are a lot of times where this strong arm government, fascist government of Ethiopia continues to put out statements deliberately in, different languages than the general world population is going to be able to digest it in, for, an effort to communicate to who they want to communicate to, and to keep the others in the dark, if you will, while they can. And one of the things that recently came to light, which, regardless of a statement or not, it was going to, because of the aid organizations that are attributed to them. Ethiopia recently suspended activities of 2 aid organizations, not military entities, not, third-party organizations where they may have like ulterior motives. These are worldwide accredited, well-known humanitarian organizations in the NRC, Norwegian Refugee Council, and MSF, which is Doctors Without Borders. And they were one of the few organizations allowed into Tigray over these 279 days, as I stated, of genocide on the people. And as of, we reported this about a month ago, 3 MSF workers were killed in Tigray, 2 of which were of Tegaru descent. Could you speak a little bit into what is the actual background of this? What is the motive? What are they clearly trying to do here?
Thanks. That's a very important question, Alula. I think the first thing that needs to be said regarding this is the decision to expel aid workers, international aid workers, and very reputable aid organizations. The decision to expel them from their work of assisting people in desperate need is by any measure unprecedented. And I don't think it has ever occurred in any normal country. These are people who go into war zones, even in countries which are basket cases in every sense. and the governments from dictatorships to democracies have ensured that they received protection, that they did the work that they need to do. For Ethiopia to expel these aid organizations is a significant development. It's unprecedented, and it has shocked the international community, and that is going to it will come back to bite the government. It's a matter of time. But I think that's I want to emphasize the magnitude of the decision, the magnitude of the ridiculousness of the decision to expel international aid workers. Now, why did the Ethiopian government felt? Why was it prompted to expel this aid organization? One thing that the Ethiopian government dreads about is it doesn't want people to go to Tigray and see the crime scene that it has created. And there is fear in government circles in Addis Ababa that these people are going to Tigray with their cameras and with their phones, and they are filming the things that they have done, the crime scene, the mass graves that they have created, the infrastructure they have totally destroyed, the thousands of people that they have killed, the mothers that they have raped, gang raped, the people, the women to whom they have inserted hot objects into their internal bodies. All these things, they feel that they are being recorded by these international aid organizations, and they fear that they will somehow find a way to leak it out to the outside world, and it would be used as evidence against them at some later time. So there is this trepidation, there is this fear that these international aid organizations are doing something which they aren't supposed to be doing. So that's the one thing. The other thing is the Abiy regime has now reached at the conclusion that it has severed whatever diplomatic relationships it has had with any Western country, and it believes that there is nothing that it would lose by expelling this international aid organization. Its reputation has already been damaged, and they are trying to salvage whatever they could salvage by expelling people who could produce evidence, like I said before, or people who could help to grant. Because one of the weapons that they are trying to use is starvation. Now we have all people, almost people who value evidence, have come to the conclusion that the government of Ethiopia wants people to starve to death, and the aid organizations have been trying to prevent that from happening. And so what they were doing in Tigray runs in direct contradiction to what the government wants to happen in Tigray. The government wants starvation to happen in Tigray, and the aid organizations were trying to prevent that from happening. So there was a clash of dreams, if you will. So this, I believe, are the two main reasons why the government felt the need to expel them. But was it a wise decision? No, it was a stupid decision, and the government will learn the magnitude of what they have done in the coming couple of weeks and months.
I think it's, to say the least, is not a bright decision. And first and foremost, the government's role is to protect its own citizens, regardless of what war or self-proclaimed law and order operation they are running. But it's preposterous to claim that you are in the midst of a humanitarian unilateral ceasefire while also blocking off roads into the region, and also essentially banning people from helping your own citizens in Tigray, in the midst of a telecommunications blackout, which is why a lot of the videos that are sneaked out of the country are really ruffling their feathers, if you will, because the goal here is to act in the dark without anyone being able to tell them this is a war crime against humanity. You cannot do this to your own people, let alone to any people. So one thing I would like to touch on is the current state of Tigray and the current state of Tegaru in the country. So we talked about just now Tghat's piece and translation of the Amharic document where they're speaking on the Tegaru soldiers. So could you give a little bit of insight, something we've discussed previously, but from your own knowledge, things that have come across, obviously credible sources, what Tegaru and Addis Ababa, capital of Ethiopia, but Tegaru as a whole are facing?
Well, I think Tegaru everywhere are now facing enormous challenges and problems. We know what is happening to Tegaru in Tigray. We believe that there is famine in large swathes of Tigray. We believe that they have been totally cut off from the rest of the world, and when that is the case, there are problems that we could easily imagine. They aren't able to communicate with their family outside Tigray. They don't know the whereabouts of their family outside Tigray. They don't know what is happening in the rest of the world. So that must bring some trauma into people in Tigray. So although there is relative peace now in Tigray, because the federal army and the Eritrean army have been, for the most part, I think, except in Western Tigray and in some cities in Eastern Tigray, they have been routed out. And there is a relative degree of peace in most areas of Tigray, and that's not nothing. That means a lot to people who had to deal with the brutality of the ANDF and Eritrean troops. So there is that positive thing, but apart from that, there is a lot of bad things happening in Tigray, starting from starvation to lack of information about what is happening outside Tigray. But for people outside Tigray, so one of the government policies for the last 9 months has been, every time it lost a battle in Tigray, it has tried to make up for that by retaliating on civilians outside Tigray. So one of the things they do is they would summarily jail Tigrayans. They would close down Tigrayan businesses everywhere, from Addis Ababa to other small cities. They would jail people for playing Tigrinya music, for instance, as we have heard they have done in Addis Ababa. They would try to extort money from Tigrayans. So they would simply jail them and tell them that they need to pay thousands of money to be released. And people have been doing that for the last 9 months. But now, I think that the most scaring thing that is happening to Tigrayans is the one that you referred to, Alula, the one that they are about, that they might do against the soldiers that they have put in concentration camps. Given that the regime is growing desperate by each day, given that the regime now feels it has nothing to lose, even if it were to do the most stupid, crazy thing, given this is the sorry state of affairs that the regime is in, it could actually go about and execute thousands of Tigrayan soldiers, and that is a real fear and devastation that the regime might visit on all of us Tigrayans. And I think that is making people dread as we speak.
Unfortunately, that's the current state of Ethiopia and Tigray specifically. It's a state of chaos, a state of animosity driven by the government. I think it's clear what their goal is in Addis Ababa and other parts of Ethiopia where Tegaru are living. It's to create one enemy, one entity, so that the state and everyone feels, driven to act and to participate in Fascist Abiy Ahmed's goals and agenda here, which is to create Tegaru as the enemy, as I stated, not one really political entity. So one thing I wanted to talk about, our technician will play the video here in a second. Samantha Power's former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. She is currently U.S. aid administrator, and she spoke a little bit on the current state of Ethiopia. And I'd like for you to react once we play this video a little bit and what this really means and what the current state is in Ethiopia.
In Ethiopia, a long-standing partner of the United States, the case is starkly different. A country that has been home to some of the most impressive development gains and economic growth anywhere on the continent, and a regional anchor of stability and security, now finds itself mired in conflict. The government's brutal campaign against the people of Tigray has put the country's people at risk of a prolonged civil war, and the people of Tigray at grave risk of imminent famine. In both Sudan and Ethiopia, we cannot assume a predetermined outcome. Sudan's trajectory is promising, but spoilers abound, and people are impatient for swifter change. Ethiopia's current path is deeply troubling, but all stakeholders there can still choose peace, pulling back from the brink. In both Sudan and Ethiopia, the United States wants to see citizens enjoy dignity, end violence, and expand economic opportunity. But too often, a lack of compromise, a winner-take-all mindset, and a prioritization by some leaders of self-interest over national interest have ruled the day.
I think it's clear who she's speaking on in here, what entities are playing this role. So if you could just, I know some of it we touched on already, but just kind of elaborate for the people what exactly she's stating we're facing.
If you don't mind, Anil, I would like to speak a little bit about the person, about Samantha Power in general. She's an internationally acclaimed author. She has written a book on genocide. She's a respected expert on these areas. She has reported from different war zones in her young days. And she is one of those people who knows what they are talking about. So she's somebody that when she speaks, you have to take seriously every word she said. She's like I said, an internationally reputable, very respected person on the issues that she talks about. So that is the first point that I would want to make regarding Samantha Power. I say that because people have been trying to portray her as a government cadre, as someone who doesn't know what she's saying, as a mere messenger of Susan Rice, as somebody who is a puppet or a channel of somebody else. There has been a sustained campaign by the Ethiopian government to paint her as somebody who doesn't know what she's talking about. So that isn't the case. She is a person who is deeply knowledgeable on this topic. So that's the first point. Regarding the specific point she makes in this short clip, Anula, she's basically echoing or channeling the U.S. government's position on the war on Tigray, and the U.S. government's position on the war on Tigray has been, on the whole, what you could call acceptable. They are saying that all belligerents, as they call them, should respect the Constitution. That is the bottom line as far as the U.S. is concerned. There should be a legal basis by which conflicts are resolved, and that is the reason why they call on all parties, especially foreign parties, to withdraw from Tigray. Eritrean parties, Eritrean troops. I'm sorry, the Amhara militia, and they aren't saying ANDF anymore, because they say that the ANDF is a national army and it has the right to be deployed anywhere. But they are insisting that the regional border, as defined by the Constitution, should be respected. So, and it's because of that reason that they also have now added the demand that the TPLF should also withdraw from Afar and from Amhara. Although the TDF has trying to justify, and correctly so, why they are in Afar and in Amhara. Tghat spoke to the BBC, and one of the big points he made was the reason that the TDF is in Afar and in Amhara is not because they are trying to regain or to reclaim or to annex some territory, but because they are trying to break off the blockade that has been forcefully imposed on Tigray. So they are trying to open corridors in a way. But the US doesn't seem to emphasize this very, very important point. But that notwithstanding, leaving that aside, the US is basically saying that all the parties, all the warring parties should respect the Constitution. And that is the main point that Samantha Power is trying to say. But unfortunately, anybody who says these points has been depicted as blasphemous, as heretic by the Ethiopian government. There is only one accepted position that the Ethiopian government is trying to push, and that is to say that the TPLF is a terrorist organization, and that the Ethiopian National Defense Forces and the Ethiopian government in general is a benevolent force that is trying to get rid of a terrorist organization. And of course, Samantha Power, being a very knowledgeable person, not one to be fooled around, knows that that is not the case. So she didn't lend that absurd claim any legitimacy in the clip that you just played, and that has incensed, that has angered Ethiopians. And if it wasn't for this clip, I think the Prime Minister was supposed, or at least he was scheduled to have a meeting with her. But what she said, he angered and incensed them so much that they made a U-turn, and he snapped her in diplomatic terms. That was extraordinary development for a leader of a country to refuse to meet the US president's envoy, because she went to Ethiopia in two capacities. One, in her capacity as the director of the USAID, and second, she was sent as the president's envoy to meet with Abiy, to nudge him to try to solve the problem peacefully. But because they couldn't handle the truth, he had to snub her. And I think, like I said before, this is another extraordinary diplomatic blunder on the part of the Ethiopian government.
Absolutely. I think blunder is the least you could say here. It's concerning, to say the least, when the administrator for U.S. aid is able to spend, I believe it's reported, 5 days in Sudan, and last minute, as you stated, unprecedented move. The strong-arm government led by Abiy Ahmed were just completely refused to meet with her. And this shows just a small picture into what the current state of Ethiopia is, and why Tigray is being purposely starved in an attempt to fight with what they claim is one entity. But it's really becoming clear by the day, if you are in Tigray, if you are of Tegaru descent, you are in fact an enemy of the government of Ethiopia now. They have made it clear that's their goal. And now, as you stated, they are unafraid of severing any ties with the West, because they seem to have embarrassed themselves and almost put themselves in a corner where they have no friends on that side of the table, essentially. So I want to give you a chance here to just talk about Tghat and how people can come and get information. You stated a few ways in terms of, you have opinion pieces, documentation in terms of videos, documentation in terms of pictures and things on your website. But how can they find information, and how can they support your group as well?
So a very straightforward way to support Tghat is to check it out and to read all the stories that we publish, because ultimately the main reason why we publish stories is for people to read and to be enlightened, to be informed, to see what is happening in Tigray, to be educated on matters related to Tigray. So I think that the first request that I would make to viewers would be to check Tghat every now and then, because we publish continuously on many pieces, actually on some days, but on a continuous basis. So there is always new information that we add to Tghat. So that is one way how everybody could be of help to Tigray. We want to develop the readership of Tghat. The other way people could assist us is by providing us with new information, whatever data, whatever information, whatever piece of evidence that people have, they could forward it to us, either privately or through the messaging system we have for Tghat. And if we deem it important, then we will find a way to publish it, maybe not as is, but after some modification for editorial reasons. But whatever content that we think is important, we find a way to publish it. So it could be data regarding people who have been killed. It could be data regarding things that have been destroyed in Tigray. It could be any personal stories of people who have found themselves at the receiving end of the brutal regime, or it could be anything that people think is important. They could send it to us, and that we would be immensely grateful for that. The other way people could help us would be by helping us financially. So we do it. We are a group of volunteers. We don't get paid for writing for Tghat or and there is a lot of maintenance fee that you pay. Maybe you'll be aware, if, I'm sure. And we always beg people to assist us financially, whatever people could. But that wouldn't be the most important demand that I would make of people. I would want people to read what we write, because if you write something, the most important thing that you want to happen is you want it to be read. You want people to read it, and it doesn't matter whether they then agree with it or disagree with it. What is important is that it is being consumed, and I think that's the most important way people could help us at Tghat.
I agree. I think it's the most important, as I stated in the beginning, a major of importance for Tegaru right now is to have a forum where we can find information that is credible, that is speaking on exactly what the people are facing, what we need to do going forward. And I'd like to touch on something. We're, as I stated, day 279 of genocide on the people of Tigray. Over the past about 9 months, we faced all things covered previously in terms of, extrajudicial mass killings of civilians, innocent women of all ages from 8 to about 90 raped in gruesome fashion. If rape of any kind is gruesome, but the kinds of documented atrocities that have occurred is just something that cannot be described to a normal person, how these things can occur to civilians of a state. And as of late, the Ethiopian government has engaged in something I've said is propaganda, where they're stating, well, the news that's being reported is inaccurate, it's biased, it's in support of the junta, the terrorist organization in the north, when in fact, really, these are independent, credible organizations, or just providing simple facts where the people don't have food. Over close to 1 million people starving at one point. Now we have surpassed that, I'm sure, in a state of famine where we're in telecommunication blackout. We can't confirm numbers of people dying or people soon on the doorstep of starvation. So one thing as of late was the alleged, unilateral ceasefire by the Ethiopian government. When they retreated, withdrew out of Mekelle and vast majority of Tigray. They still, as you stated, are in western Tigray, still in some eastern portions of Tigray, but for the most part withdrew on that about a month or so since from today. They claimed it as a humanitarian almost action in terms of the people of Tigray are now starving, something they have denied until that point. My question to you is for onlookers or genocide apologist people who come to you and ask you a question. Well, the government gave you an opportunity for peace, an opportunity for food. Why wouldn't you take that when given the opportunity, if you really are against genocide and really trying to feed your people?
Well, I think that the first thing to say whenever people tell you why aren't you grateful to the government for giving you an opportunity to consider what was the term the Prime Minister used was that he generously gave the Tigray people time for contemplation and reflection. And when people say that, the standard response should be that it instead gave itself, the regime gave itself time to regroup and invade and attack Tigray again. That is what happened. Now, why do I say that? The unilateral ceasefire was declared at exactly the same time when the Tigray Defense Forces, number one, they downed a military cargo plane. Number two, they captured thousands of prisoners of war. Number three, they registered extraordinary victories in around Tembien and in vast other areas of Tigray. Now, this isn't my personal opinion. This is something that has been memorialized and reported by the New York Times, who fortunately had a reporter when this development happened in Mekelle. So what happened was the government didn't leave Tigray, didn't withdraw its troops from Tigray on its own volition. What happened was it was absolutely routed out. It was defeated from Tigray, and in desperation, they created this face-saving scheme where they say that they have declared unilateral ceasefire, but no sensible person, nobody who looks at the evidence, and nobody who follows the developments that happened at around the time when they declared ceasefire would say that it was a ceasefire. It was a desperate move to avoid humiliation, although I don't think they succeeded in that enterprise. But anyways, what happened after the 28th of June, which is, I think, the day when they were forced to leave Mekelle, is they immediately resorted to another form of war. Some people call it economic asphyxiation or economic chokehold against Tigray. So they cut off Tigray from all directions, and they made sure that nothing gets into Tigray. So they lost the war militarily, but they thought that they could try the war by another means, by starving Tigray, by depriving Tigray of anything, and by making the Tigray people to grow frustrated with the system in Tigray, because if people don't eat, if people don't have anything, they are going to start asking questions, and they will start to reject whatever system of government they have in the region. That was the government's thinking, and he said that the people would then say, well, things couldn't get worse, and therefore the federal government should come and rescue us. So that was the thinking. So again, I want to emphasize that the federal government didn't give the Tigray people a chance. What happened was the army, its troops were defeated, and in a face-saving mood, it declared a unilateral ceasefire. That wasn't a ceasefire. It still is fighting insofar as it can fight. It's fighting in Amhara and it's fighting in Afar. Although according to reports and according to the things we hear, it's only a matter of time before it's totally defeated.
Absolutely. It's things we have covered previously in terms of this being a masqueraded act of propaganda, essentially, an effort to hide their military defeats and an effort to, sway Western specifically, but global opinion on what's occurring and perception of what's occurring, and to put pressure on the Tigray region to kind of acquiesce to their demands and kind of tell them you are now the reason this war is continuing, when in fact that's not true. I think anyone with an unbiased view for information can see that. And I always say we should avoid engaging in hate speech, but we can always look at the other side's questions and maybe even unbiased people's questions like this to kind of give a clear standpoint of what's actually occurring. And I think you answered that perfectly. I think the work your organization is doing is, unquestionably important for us. And I hope you can continue to support you guys any way we can. I thank you for your time joining us today. Tegaru Mikel from Tghat join us today. Thank you again. And I hope we can speak again, hopefully in on a better topic or in a better time. But for our information and our discussion today, this was more than I can ask for.
It's been my pleasure, Alula. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate that. Thanks.
No problem. Until we meet again, thank you.